served on numerous international committee assignments. I extend you a most cordial welcome, dear sir. Next, I would like to welcome our panel members, and I would also like to take an excuse if I mispronounce your names, and please pardon me for the same. Dr. Abdullah Al-Haji, Managing Director, Academy of Health Science, Syria. Dr. Ebony Al-Amin, Assistant Professor, Forte State University, USA. Professor David Archer, Director, Healthcare MPA Program, Christian Brothers University, USA. Former CEO, St. Francis Healthcare. Dr. Thomas Pankow, Professor Emeritus University of Southern Mississippi, USA. Dr. Majlinda Ketta, Professor University of Tirana, Albania. Dr. Harry Kochat, Director of Operations and Business Development, University of Tennessee Healthcare Center, USA. Dr. Mauricio Umana, Director of MOC Harvard Program, Unicase, El Salvador. Dr. Muhammad Noor Alam Siddiq, Associate Professor, Begum Rokeya University, Bangladesh. Dr. Nayan Jyoti Sharma, Lead Scientist, Covens, USA. Dr. Sajal Kabiraj, Professor, Heim University of Applied Science, Hämeenlinna, Finland. Dr. Sonia Aguilar, Assistant Professor, Texas A&M University, Central Texas, USA. Dr. Lena Becutario, Lecturer, RMIT University, Vietnam. Dr. Manoj Menon, Chief Information Officer, Sportcheck Global, UAE. I wholeheartedly welcome you all to our panel discussion on the topic healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss. The way to develop the best in a person is by appreciation and encouragement, says Charles Schwab. So now I invite Dr. Jansi Devi, Research Guide and former Head of Research Department of Commerce and Management Studies, for the felicitation. Over to you, Miss.
Dr. Sister Asha Teres, our Vice Principals, Sister Blessy and Dr. Sister Eliza, Self-Financing Course Coordinator, Dr. Sister Rose Bastin, Professor Thomas K.I., Head of the Department of Commerce and Management Studies, St. Joseph's College, Irinjalakuda, Dr. Babu George, Professor and Associate Dean of Graduate Business, Christian Brothers University, United States of America, dignitaries and delegates from India and abroad, faculties of St. Joseph's College, and participants from various places. Good morning. Have a nice day. I take it a privilege to be with you to extend my felicitation note. This conference is a fruit of the hard work of two teams, that is, Department of Commerce and Management Studies, St. Joseph's College, Irinjalakuda, and Graduate Business, Christian Brothers University, United States of America. I congratulate both the teams and especially the heads of the departments, Professor Thomas K.I. and Dr. Babu George. Today, we are blessed to have with us Dr. Alvin J. Williams, who is a distinguished professor of marketing at University of South Alabama, United States of America. He will talk to us on reprogramming normal, implications for strategic marketing in a post-COVID world, Sir, we are greatly honored by your presence.
Thank you.
We have a panel discussion today on healthcare by an elite group of members. This is a golden opportunity to learn about the present conditions post-COVID in different parts of the world, and I hope that the participants will make the best use of it. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Now we will be moving on to today's technical session. Today, we have with us the charming personality, Dr. Alvin J. Williams, for the keynote address. He's a distinguished professor of marketing at Mitchell College of Business at the University of South Alabama. Today, he is with us to talk to us about reprogramming normal implications for strategic marketing in a post-COVID world. Now, without any more wait, let me hand it over to you, sir.
Good morning. It's certainly a pleasure to be a part of this great conference, and it is a delight to revisit some of the people that I met at Kerala at St. Joseph's some 10 years ago. I want to recognize in particular two people that I remember when I was at St. Joseph, Dr. Sister Rose Bastin and Dr. Philo Francis. Those are two colleagues that I remember quite well, and thank you immensely for having me once again. The topic that I have for you today is one that is of immense interest, I think, across the board. It deals with reprogramming normal, and in particular, we will focus a few minutes on strategic marketing. Marketing is such an important part of healthcare and in so many other areas until I think this topic will certainly fit what the conference was intended to show. The next thing here, again, is just to focus on the theme of the conference, International Conference on Post-COVID Scenario, Threats and Opportunities. And I will certainly focus on some of those threats, but more particularly, we'll look at some opportunities. I have a few objectives for the presentation today. First of all is to convey the managerial urgency of reconfiguring marketing strategy. When we have these hyper disruptive global markets, we have to reconfigure how we think about what marketing is all about. Marketing is certainly a dynamic field, one that can certainly change as needed, but the rate of change that we've experienced over the years, over the past 12 months in particular, that rate has been unbelievable. So the comments and suggestions that I have today are primarily aimed to that end. The second objective is to identify and to assess what I call adaptive alternatives. We must have more adaptive systems in order to support the change that we are experiencing. So marketing people in particular are very much interested in understanding how market dynamics can certainly work in helping them to formulate strategies to accommodate the dynamics of the marketplace. The third goal that I have is to take an interdisciplinary approach, a multi-pronged approach to thinking about and actualizing models that we can build some sustainable solutions to what I call this post-COVID environment. And I think over the course of my comments, I will cover each one of those areas. As in any presentation, there's a fundamental question that ought to be addressed. And the one that I have for you today is how can astute marketers, how can we conceptualize, develop and implement what I call value-added strategies in perennially disruptive market spaces. That's a tall order, but that's where we find ourselves today. We have got to continue creating value-added strategies in disruptive market spaces and market states. So if we don't understand this disruption, which we're in the midst of, we're going to miss major opportunities to do some things that we ought to do. So that's the question that I want to address today. The next few points I call observations and musings, for a lack of a better label. Reprogramming requires what I call a thorough examination and re-examination of the firm's value proposition. Every single thing that we do in business, in marketing, whether healthcare or any other type of institution, we have value propositions. So in this post-COVID environment, we've got to put our value propositions under a microscope. We've got to look at these value propositions in ways that we've never looked at them before. Many firms have not really thought about or rethought their value propositions in the new environment. They're operating under the same assumptions, under the same variables, which just isn't going to work. So there are a few questions associated with this reprogramming of the value proposition. Basically, why are we in this business? After we think about what business we're really in, why are we in this business? Have we defined our business realm appropriately? Many, many years ago, a well-known marketing writer wrote an article on marketing myopia. And he said basically that we're defining the business that we're in too narrowly. You know, that article was written so long ago, I'm wondering how it might be perceived today in this environment. But we still have to ask, what business are we in, or what business ought we to be in, given the circumstances? What business should we be in considering massive market upheavals? Maybe we've been in this same business for 25 years. Should we rethink extensions of that business? Should we contract some of the markets that we've been focusing on in the past? Should we expand our market bandwidth? There are so many questions that we have to think about them in a careful, disciplined way. A related question, what are our obvious and not so obvious core competencies? What is it that we really, really do better than other people? Can we build on that? Are there some core competencies that we really haven't thought as seriously about? And that leads us to the next point there. Where are the holes in our value opportunity map? Every single business, healthcare is no different. Every single business has a value opportunity map from which they work. So how do we fill in the holes in these value opportunity maps? Should we be filling in different holes than we are today? Should we rethink the holes that we are filling today? So that's the first set of musings. The second, somewhat related set of observations and musings, how can we conceptualize and realize what I call a pandemic-proof marketing organization? Now, there is really no such thing, and you might know that, but how can we get as closely as possible to pandemic-proofing our marketing organization? How can we move toward this lofty space of pandemic-proofing our marketing strategy? I don't think we're going to ever really genuinely get there, but we ought to be of the mindset that we're going to get as close to that goal as possible. We ought to be in a dynamic state that will allow us to think in that pandemic mode. And if you want just an honest observation, I think all organizations today ought to think and somewhat operate in a pandemic mode. There is no such thing as going back. We must press forward. And there's some questions that maybe some of you thought about. related to this. And one that came to mind earlier is number 2 here. Will this pandemic escalate deglobalization? Will we have a decoupling of our supply chains? You know, in 2020, all of the supply chains are interwoven. They are married together. Are we going to see some unlocking of those supply chains? And that unlocking is really another form of deglobalization. The third set of musings: is your marketing culture preparing for what I call colossal revolutionary change in markets, in customers, in supply chains, in the way that we do business? Well, if we're not doing that, we ought to at least revisit what I call internal learning systems as part of people preparation. What do those internal learning systems look like? How should those internal learning systems change? And as part of this, we need to re-examine what I call the marketing social structure, marketing networks, both internally and externally. The McKinsey group, they're always in the lead in so many areas. They had an article that was very right on the mark, dealing with marketing in the next normal. And this article was published, I believe, in July of last year. So right in the middle of the pandemic. Well, what they did, they took 6 variables, and you can refer to the article. They took 6 variables, and they looked at those variables from a lot of different angles in terms of the new normal. The first one, of course, was shopping. We've all seen this great digital migration. Will that migration continue? Will it be expanded? Will we expand our digital borders? Will there be new models of consumer behavior? In this particular study, and I'll just give this one example, they said in Latin America in particular, during this period in 2020, 13 million consumers in Latin America shopped online for the very first time. That's quite telling. So will those 13 million people, what will they do 6 months from now, a year from now? So will they expand their digital footprints and continue to shop online? That's something that we've got to think about. Number 2 is e-services. The article talked about new service platforms, new ecosystem partnerships. And they gave the example of healthcare institutions working with food institutions and fitness centers and telemedicine institutions, crossing different platforms, but still looking at the same basic area of health. If we take a comprehensive view of healthcare, what types of new e-services can we develop? What type of ecosystem partnerships can we develop? And that particular part of the article was quite telling, because there are so many opportunities. And if you look at it, I don't remember the numbers, but if you look at the huge increase in the use of telemedicine in the year 2020, it's going to increase in 2021 and maybe 2022. And the question we have to ask is, why would we turn back? If telemedicine is doing so well for us now, why should we return to whatever we did in 2019 and before? The third area of focus was community in that article, localizing experiences, local businesses, people connected more in their neighborhoods. And that was critical. While they certainly did other things beyond their neighborhoods, they got to know people around them. They looked at what they were doing in a very different way. They defined community in a more local vein, and that made a tremendous difference. The McKinsey article defined home as the command central, the new command central. The home was a place that we did everything. We worked at home. We had schooling at home, K through college at home. It was a place of recreation. The home served every single imaginable role. What is it that we ought to think differently? How do we think differently about the home as this new command central? How can we reprogram the home, if you will, to reposition this command central status that homes now enjoy? The fifth component of that article was creating space primarily through trust. We are looking at trust as a key variable, not just in healthcare and the affordability associated with it, but in general, in all exchange processes. That element of trust took on new dimensions. The last variable in that article dealt with purpose. Consumers began to have higher expectations of brands. They had higher standards that they were expecting. They had more socially conscious values. So for many consumers, there was a greater sense of purpose. And we might ask ourselves, why wouldn't that quest for a greater sense of purpose, why wouldn't that continue beyond? I put together what I'll call just a brief model, and marketing people like P's, so we have 5 P's instead of 4. The 5P model for reprogramming normal marketing in what we call chaotic environments. So what is it that we're reprogramming? What is it that we're redoing? We are shifting and rethinking people and products and processes and partnerships and the potential of our own organizations. That's what's part of reprogramming. So when we say reprogramming in the marketing vein, we're looking at new and different roles for people. We're looking at new products and new resources and new brands. We're thinking about new and different processes, or we're thinking about doing new things with old processes. We're thinking about doing new things with old procedures. That's all part of reprogramming, reformatting. And then, of course, we will have to think about new partnerships. Supply chains will change, internal partnerships will change, external partnerships, everything is going to change. So we need to get in front of this curve, and we need to focus a little bit of attention on how we can do some things up front in advance. Now, we're not going to predict every single pandemic, but I think we can do a better job of preparing. And part of that preparation is reprogramming what we do. And the last P that I have here is potential. I contend this morning for a lot of you that organizations will realize even more potential, not less potential. It is a mindset, it is a state of mind that they have to work on. Just because these circumstances are so different, it doesn't mean that we have less potential as an organization. I contend that we have more potential. We need to unleash that potential in that reprogramming process. And if we don't do that, we're missing some major opportunities. So in my final slide, I wanted to just look at a few of these things together. In terms of people, we reprogram skill sets, we reprogram values, and certainly rewards. What's important to the people that work with us? Do they value the same things in 2021 that they did in 2019? To a certain extent, the answer is yes, but their interests might be broader. We have a different workforce today than we had 2 years ago. We treat that workforce differently. We have different ways of rewarding them. Number 2, under products, we reconfigure what I call direct and indirect inputs. The things that go into making our organizations, we've got to reconfigure those. We've got to think in a way of, we have resources today, how can I reshape them? How can I revisit them in a way that will make a difference? And not just the direct inputs, indirect inputs, things that we don't think about normally. Under processes, we reimagine systems. We reimagine networks. We put all of this together in a way that we link systems together in a different way. And if we don't link systems in a different way, we're going to end up doing what we did 2 years ago. That won't cut it in tomorrow's environment. We are shaping marketing organizations for tomorrow, not today, and certainly not yesterday. Do not be comfortable with whatever your marketing strategies are for today. We are shaping them, we're conceptualizing them for tomorrow. The fourth point, rethinking internal and external links, whether they are supply chains or any other kinds of networks and systems. We have to rethink how they're put together and our role in each one of those links. And the last point is to reconsider possibilities. What are the possibilities for your healthcare organization? What are the possibilities for your retail organization, your manufacturing unit? What is it that you need to think about? And since many of us are in education, how do we rethink higher education? What is it that we ought to reprogram in higher education to meet the needs of future pandemics? And keep in mind, I indicated earlier, we ought to always think and quite often operate in that pandemic mode. It keeps us on our toes. It keeps us at a level of awareness that's so important to a sustained future, adding value over a long period of time. And with that, I'm going to stop. I know that there's a lot more going on at the conference, but I at least wanted to open the door and to share some of my basic thoughts. And at this point, you're back in the hands of the moderator. So if there are questions, I will respond. Well, calling once, calling twice. Again, thank you for the high privilege of
Can you please unmute, sir? Alan, sir.
I want to say that thank you for inviting me to share a few thoughts at this conference. I'm just elated at the opportunity to return, even by this medium, to St. Joseph's. And I look forward to some future date when I can join people there in Carroll at St. Joseph, especially our colleagues, Dr. Baston and Dr. Francis. So again, with that, I will return you to the coordinator. Thank you, and best wishes for a great remaining time at the conference.
Thank you, sir, for the informative session. The importance of health cannot be stressed enough on a day-to-day basis. With a pandemic in our hands, its importance has risen. Today, with the millions of our fellow brothers and sisters being wiped by the pandemic and a vaccine at our hands, what's next? Today's panel discussion is on this. Now, let me invite our dear to introduce our panel members and to mediate the discussion. Over to you, sir.
Have a very good morning. Alvin, good late night, 12 o'clock in the midnight. It has been really thought-provoking and soul-provoking to listen to you after several years, Alvin. Alvin visited St. Joseph's College in 2009-10. Yes, yeah, we still remember those opportunities of going out, seeing the heart and soul of Kerala.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, and thanks again for coming back. Okay, let me introduce the panel members. I don't really want to introduce them by calling names one after the other, but I would briefly tell about them as we present the topics. Today's panel is the third one as part of the third one that we organized as part of this conference. The first panel was on education during COVID-19. The second one was on industry during COVID-19. And today's panel is health. Alvin has touched upon some of the very important dimensions of healthcare during COVID-19, and he raised that question, will we ever go back, or should we ever go back? And maybe that could be the starting point for the panel. Uh, do you think that all the reactions, all the transformations that happen in healthcare sector, are these merely liminal, short-term, temporary, transient, or are these changes going to sustain? That could be a overarching question. In the panel, we have people coming from different backgrounds. We have people who have expertise in the scientific development. You know, I'm particularly looking at Nayan. Dr. Nayan Jyoti Sharma is a scientist. And we have those of us who have expertise in the technological aspect of healthcare. We have Dr. Manoj Menon here, I believe, and Harry is also an expert in healthcare. He is directing the University of Tennessee's healthcare center here, and he's actively involved in development of instrumentation tools. And we have Professor David Archer. He is a professor of healthcare management, but in his past life, which continues, he was the director of a major hospital group here, so he has that practitioner's perspective. Then we have some of the panel members who have done significant research in the mental health. You know, Majlinda, Lena, and a few others. I cannot see all of you on the screen. And Dr. Benny is there. She's also someone who can speak more about the sociological aspect. You know, she spends a lot of time studying the equity and inclusion in healthcare. So it's a very rich panel. And Professor Panko, I can see here. I hope we all take as little time as possible to share as much as possible. The reason I'm saying this is during the last two panels, we exceeded the available time, and the remaining presentations suffered as a result of it. So I humbly request the people, my friends and colleagues here, not to take more than a couple of minutes to give your prefacing remarks. Then we can revisit topic after topic. So I would truly appreciate if you do not take it like a PowerPoint presentation, but rather, you know, share one or two ideas at a time, then coming back. So let me ask this prefacing question. What are some of the major changes happening in healthcare? If you could highlight one or two in the context of your country, your industrial context, your research context, or anything that you are familiar with. What are one or two things that are fundamentally transforming healthcare currently? I mean, I need to probably call someone, and let me call none other than Dave. Dave, will you be kind enough to start?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I was a little surprised with Mackenzie's comment about telemedicine. The idea that we would go back or reverse course in telemedicine is almost foolish. You know, we've been wanting to go down this road for years. It has tremendous promise, especially in terms of psychiatry, psychologists, and especially serving patients in rural areas. In those fields that are not plentiful. I think we're also seeing and going to see more rapid closure of rural hospitals. And so that's going to force healthcare systems like the one I ran and others to expand into those areas with telemedicine, expand with freestanding emergency rooms, but emergency rooms well equipped with telemedicine capabilities, so that we're not just transferring every patient. The other was, you know, I think remote monitoring obviously is growing rapidly, and the other was interesting, the home command center. And I know other countries where, single payer systems exist have had much more inpatient care in the home. For us in the US, it's a very new concept. And I think that's an exciting area. So those are what I see. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So it's good that you pitch for telemedicine. So why don't we start our conversation, continue to have that conversation for a few minutes. And I'm seeing Dr. Manoj Menon. I know Manoj for, I don't know, several years. Manoj is a tech entrepreneur in the healthcare telemedicine, e-health, telehealth arena. He is a scholar practitioner. He's not just an entrepreneur. He's not just a business leader, but he also spends a lot of time to write. He has several scholarly research papers in that area. I'm so blessed to have Manoj because, I happened to mentor him during his doctoral studies long back. I mean, he's much more advanced in terms of knowledge about this than me. Manoj, what do you think? I mean, particularly in the context of what you do in Dubai and elsewhere, what is the future of telehealth? I think you need to unmute.
Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Babu, for the kind words. It's a very interesting time, especially after COVID, the way things are moving. Telemedicine is the way of life which is going to be. And it's a good factor for the patient. And healthcare is moving more towards health consumerism, which is a big boon and which was quite away from whatever was going on. And I agree with Dave, what he said, that telemedicine and patient remote monitoring will change the perspective of healthcare delivery itself. People will start receiving the care sitting at home. That's one. And if you really see the chronic disease patients, they have not visited last year the hospital. There is a decline of 55 to 60%. And so that means it proves that you can sit at home and get the care delivery which is required. So it's a very interesting time where I would say it's a boon for the technology when we talk about certain changes which has happened in the technology as a healthcare delivery point of view. So that's an interesting thing which is going. And with the telemedicine, there will be other activities which is getting involved with the telemedicine, that is artificial intelligence, kind of virtual reality, augmented reality. So it's my guess that in due course of time, the hospital will be purely focusing on the acute care rather than getting into the basic outpatient activities. And that's the kind of a direction it's leading to the technology, not only telemedicine, but other technology which is supporting telemedicine. So that's my 2 cents, whatever is going on in this part of the world.
Do you anticipate non-traditional actors coming to the space? For example, I'm thinking about the travel industry. Expedia came. It was not in the travel industry, and it monopolized. So, do you think some tech companies with very little domain competence, they come there and?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I can give you a best example. In Dubai or in UAE, they have started a new kind of visa, which is digital nomad. So you can sit in UAE and work wherever your organization is. Now, if that is the kind of amalgamation which is happening with the travel industry, health industry, now there are specific medical tourism which is happening with healthcare and the technology part. So there is a marriage between technology, travel industry, or hospitality for that matter, wellness industry, and healthcare. So you can see a lot of collaboration which is going to happen to deliver this healthcare in a better way. And patient, as I was giving example of augmented reality, you will be, or maybe a virtual reality, when you're sitting and doing an operation, you might be in, Iceland, seeing places. That's a kind of technology which we are in. So it's not just one industry, it's multiple industry which is coming in and trying to, example, banks. Now banks have come out with a wellness. If you talk about steps, if you have completed 10,000 steps, they will give you $100. So you can see that wellness, health, and different industry is going to converge and give that delivery to make patient more. I would say patient has never been consumer. Now the dynamics are changing, and that's very interesting.
Thank you so much. So an associated issue is the scientific developments, the pace at which scientific and technological establishments collaborated in, say, vaccine development or the development of other technologies. That's very phenomenal. I mean, that pace has probably never been. It's like a wartime effort. I would like to have some conversation about that. Particularly Harry, you are very closely connected with the development of both hardware and even medicine. What changes do you see in terms of trials? What changes do you see in terms of the time it takes to the market and simultaneous testing and use? Those are very, very new things for the common men like us. Do you think those changes are going to have lasting impacts?
Sure. Good evening for all from the Western Bloc and good morning for all from the Eastern Bloc. Thanks, Babu, inviting me for this. As he introduced me earlier, I'm very much involved in the sterile drug manufacturing, and I be associated with patients as well as hospitals. So let me talk about that. One of the telemedicine aspects that is going to shape because of the pandemic. First of all, one of the key things that hit all of us when this pandemic situation originated was keeping employees safe. And to keep employees safe, what we did, we managed the work style transitions, meaning keeping certain people working from home, other people working from office. So what we learned from there, one of the key aspects that is going to shape in future, there is no return to the pre-COVID conditions. Instead, what we are going to see, there will be a big shift of inpatient and outpatient hospital way of dealing with to patient home. For example, there'll be a lot of infusions that patients need to get from hospitals. They're going to happen in homes because people are working from homes, they're comfortable from homes. That's one of the things. Rehabilitation, that part is going to be at patient homes, which is going to happen. Physical therapy, that's going to be again based on home. Remote monitoring, they will do it from hospitals for patients from home. So that's one of the aspects that we learned from this pandemic in the telemedicine, and it's going to happen quite a bit in future.
Thank you so much for providing that perspective. The homes could be the new clinics, or there may not be
because there's a safety.
It may not be just for the old age people.
Feel more comfortable being at home, not in the midst of other people with potential transmitting and other things. So that's going to happen quite a bit.
Nayan, what do you think about the picture of, what is happening in the pharmaceutical or research sector?
So it is, can you hear me well, Babu?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I am basically involved with clinical trials. So, and so we basically I'm mostly involved with my workplace, Covance. They provide clinical trials to large pharmaceutical companies. And since the pandemic happened, we actually pulled all our resources to COVID-19. So we basically came up with different kind of testing for COVID-19. And that is and basically mainly for the clinical trial and also at the diagnostic world. And those clinical trials that we have developed is basically keeping in mind the situation of the pandemic. Now, for example, at one time for the pre-pandemic level, how are clinical trials done? Like if there's a patient who is enrolled in the clinical trial, that person will come to the clinic and then the person will provide a sample. And once that sample is provided, that sample is sent to a testing site for clinical trial. Now, which is not a possibility now. And so that brings us two challenges. First of all, how do we get people enrolled in clinical trial, how this clinical trial should go on? And second thing, how do we get samples? If a person, a clinical trial volunteer means a sample, and how do we get the sample? So that's basically, we came up with certain ideas to counter this kind of a scenario where if a person or a participant of a clinical trial cannot come to the clinic. So for that, we have started like pre-pandemic level, the samples were complex. Like first of all, it could be a tissue biopsy. It could be basically whole blood. Now we have to switch to samples which are easy to collect. Basically, the person can collect at home. For example, saliva, stool, urine, something, a biological fluid that's easy to. Then we had to develop assays, the same assays that work in complex biological metrics, work in this kind of simple metrics. And that also brings up the situation of stability of the sample. Now, if sample, when it is collected in the clinic, it immediately go to freezer and it's basically shipped. Now, if a sample has to be collected at someone's house, and you cannot tell that person that, okay, bring it now or something like that, it will take time. So that brings us to I think that opens up a whole area of industry that is basically the home collection device. So that's a very upcoming industry of home sample collection devices. And we have seen in past, like since COVID, there is a huge surge in companies that are offering this kind of home collection, sample collection kits. For example, we used to get saliva. So there's a company called DNA Genotech. They would make small kits where you basically keep saliva and you come to clinic, donate your saliva and then leave. Now they came up with a very specialized kind of, they developed technology to come up with a different kind of collection device with a preservative there that will preserve the genetic material for up to 21 days. So that's when that happens, basically your sample is safe. We can do clinical trial based on home-based collection. So that is, I think, lot of clinical trials and things happening, people coming to site, giving complex biological metrics is going to change to simpler biological metrics, which will be basically very simple as saliva, stool, urine, and moving into more standardized or more robust collection devices, which will keep the sample safe. And so this is something we are seeing that this is going to be a big change in the clinical trial world, where we'll be seeing a lot of changes in those areas.
Is there a heightened, a greater level of collaboration among pharmaceutical companies or scientific establishments in general? Because I mean, I'm finding. I mean, today I was listening to a news item that says several companies are developing vaccines. You know, initially, I mean, manufacturing vaccines initially developed by their competitors. So Pfizer vaccine is developed by several other, pharma companies that are traditionally considered to be their competitors. So, I mean, in every sphere, that collaboration, I think, has increased. Maybe there will be long-lasting benefits of such collaborations. Okay, so let's slowly navigate to mental health issues. I mean, I'm not hurting this group because the people sitting here are so much more experts than me. I'm a professor of management and strategy, so I don't really have domain expertise on this. Other than that, I worked on telemedicine on the strategy side of telemedicine. So I don't consider myself to be someone who has expertise in the topic today. But since a lot of you work in sociological and psychological areas related to health, some of you may be able to talk about the nuances of it. I'm thinking about Majlinda. I mean, what are some of the mental health issues, and maybe you could share some suggestions on dealing with them, or anything else that you find valuable for this group. You need to unmute too. Majlinda, you need to unmute yourself. Yes.
Maybe it's complexity from the lessons online. Everybody, hi from Albania. I am Mylinda from University of Tirana. My expertise came from the education directly, but in policymaker too. I am part of you as a privilege, and in the other as good students to hear you about a big point who related us. Healthcare, management, and education. Why? Because Professor Alvin just said the cross-disciplinary solutions are better than we can solve the problem only and without assistance from the others. Albania is a part of pandemic view for all the world, but for us it's very difficult to have access directly in some data who related with the mental care, and mental health or healthcare well-being for children and students too, because nobody speaks about them, nobody monitoring this kind of point, very important after the 10 months in lessons online. For me, focus of this problem is the first exception to have collaborate with each other, especially with expertise from the healthcare, because nobody news, nobody in paper, nobody in news, in our daily news talked about healthcare for the children after 10 years lessons online, or for students too. We prepare one study in capital of our country, in Tirana, in public and non-public school, and the first phenomenon we touched them is digital bullyism. We know everybody, bullyism towards children represent a serious problem that compromise child development and well-being, violent their fundamental rights, dignity, and can ever put their life at risk. If you relate this in one country in 50% in poverty of population, if you related this in one country in which in public school 1 from 5 children has possibility to have one computer in home, or 2 to 3 in non-public school have the computer or laptop or other digital instruments for the lesson online, to have 99% of teachers who have had for the first time the experience on the lessons online, you know, to take a big picture, what's happened really in our educational system. Everybody is under the stress. Some of them now express themselves as a part of the digital tourism, and the other side together are in the same boat. In the other side, the official fighting with the virus, formally known as fighting directly for every people who touch from the virus. Nobody monitor what's happened with the children in the same family in which parent touch from the virus or past virus fighting. And in the other side, nobody has relation with this kind of the data, which I share with you, and what's happened in the mental health in our children. For me, is a very big issue, a dangerous issue, as Professor Alvin said, for future, not only for present. And for that, I want to know from you or to share with you what's happening in your country or what kind of the document you have prepared together, psychologue, doctors, expertise for the marketing, expertise for the education, who are like a guide to monitoring, to assist it, to mentoring this kind of the phenomenon which happen in all of the countries in the world. Mm-hmm. Every children in the world has problem with healthcare now, especially in mental care. Mental health, especially in mental well-being, and for that I am sure to listen from you your experience about that, how you can manage or are managing this point in the education for your children, especially as parent or as expert of the problem. In the other side, I don't know any special document from our international institution about that. Maybe it's good to start from this kind of the conference, to start any study, special study, or any special guideline for the educator, especially for the manager of the education, for the policy maker, and doctors too. Psychologues too, to help our children and our students to pass this kind of the stress during this pandemic time. We don't know how many months we will pass again the same experience, but we know we have 2 types more now. In my country, we are discussing about that. In the world, we have 2 types more virus in the new version, and the new reality, the lessons online now is the new reality who are compromise our mental health of our children and students. I am waiting from you to discuss about that maybe, or to start another conference about that. Thank you very much.
Maybe you should organize one so we could all attend.
Yes, thank you.
So thank you for thank you for initiating that discussion. And another expert that I'm seeing here in that arena is Dr. Bukatiri Lena. Lena is also we work very closely on mental health. We published a few good research papers together. Would you like to add something, Lena, about mental health during COVID-19?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, evening. What Babu and I worked on was actually before COVID. So a few things have changed. I will try to, address the issue of how we market mental health now in Vietnam. And 2, I will try to help with Mylinda's question a little bit with what we're doing in our school. So in terms of how mental health delivery and promotion have changed, after the COVID time, or now during it for most of you, for Vietnam, the situation is a bit more safe, more stable. So what is happening now is almost all marketing communications related to mental health, psychology, and psychiatry have moved to digital, which was unusual 2 years ago, 3 years ago. In the past, state governments or government hospitals never communicated digitally. Now they do reactively. So if someone sends a question, they will reply to it, but they won't promote actively digitally. Whereas the private clinics have gone full digital, including delivering Skype calls for treatment, phone conversations for assessment of potential patients, customers, as they call them, and so on. The other one, I know we're supposed to keep within 1 or 2 minutes, so I'm trying. The other one, to refer to what Mylinda started, I work in a private university, Australian-based private university that is here in Vietnam. And since before COVID, we have mental health counselors on campus. We have a well-being department. The well-being department deals with mainly 3 areas. One is students with special needs. So you have some students with physical or mental disabilities, and they have special plans for them. 2, they deal with short-term spikes in stress related to exams and stress related maybe to the way I teach and so on. And the third area is they used to deal more with the staff, with issues, mental health issues related to staff, but they found this to be not cost effective. The counseling sessions for students are free. And in the past, the ones for employees used to be free as well. So now they decided to no longer do that in-house, and instead it was outsourced to an app that is based in Australia that is called Benestar. My personal experience with Benestar has been spotty. It requires an international phone call because the experts are based in Australia. So I found it difficult to use. And instead, I just go to my regular psychiatrist who is a Vietnamese. And I think that's it for now. I know Babu has more things on his plate, so over back to you.
No, it's very valuable. I mean, yes, yeah. So taking a slight diversion, I'm going to my former colleague, Dr. Elamin Abeni. Good to see you here. I am again not directing you to a particular line of thought, but I would assume you may want to share your views on how satisfied are you with the overall healthcare delivery? I mean, I know one of your areas is, as I said before, healthcare inclusion and equity, and or you could also talk about education related issues. I'm just keeping it open for you for a few minutes.
Yes, thank you, Dr. George. I am Abini Elamin, and I am the assistant professor, an assistant professor of management at Fort Hays State University. But typically, I teach in the international programs in Shenyang, China. And so there have been many issues that have been discussed, and I've been taking notes, but in particular, one that is, I think, vitally important when we think about mental health is the impact of telehealth on mental health patients. It is incredibly challenging. We know that COVID has taken us all by storm, and based on experiences and meetings that I've had with clients, and so I also have expertise in psychology and more less pastoral counseling. So some of the things that I've heard and some of the challenges that these patients are having is the personal connection that telehealth medicine just does not provide, and that is something that healthcare, by and large, that we're going to have to deal with in the future so that we can maintain the health of patients. And then additionally, we've got to figure out, like I said, to create that personal touch with those patients so that again, we can strengthen their health. But I did want to also comment on Dr. Williams. He provided a very good synopsis of how we can move forward with COVID-19, with marketing and communication. And so much of my expertise is honestly in management, strategic planning, and things of that nature. And so I think that, again, Dr. Williams did a fantastic job of bringing salient points in terms of where we need to go from a marketing standpoint. I just wanted to add that healthcare professionals, that we must demonstrate strategic management within healthcare so that we can, again, siding with Dr. Williams, so we can strengthen the supply chain, we can convey project plans better, and we can present highlights of success. I really do think that based on what he was saying, so whether it is healthcare in general or mental health, every time you look at the news, it's always something negative that's going on. And I don't think that healthcare at this juncture globally, that we're talking about all of the successes that we're having. And so appropriate marketing and communication are key when dealing with patients and other stakeholders. So in particular with mental health, our mental health patients, they need to know that solutions are being constructed and being developed on their behalf. So we want to keep in mind that although all communication is not going to be positive within this crisis or just even in our daily lives pre-COVID or even post-COVID, which I'm praying that we quickly motivate towards, but the skill of the emotionally intelligent healthcare professional can turn some of these negative situations and experiences into positive outcomes for all patients as well as stakeholders. And so successful healthcare professionals need both hard and soft skills in order to pull all of this off. And so the timing of this conference is very critical as we continue to cope with the COVID-19 crises. So, you know, obviously there are these different strands that have been illuminated in the United States, where I reside currently. And so we're definitely not out of COVID as it were. So healthcare professionals must be prepared to address negative situations the moment that they occur and need to understand the risk of sending mixed messages. And these are some of the notes that I took as Dr. Williams was talking, because, you know, as opposed to being reactive, I think that the public as well as our patients, that they need to get the information that is most salient or that is current to them. So thus, transparent, consistent, respectful, and authoritative communication and marketing can mitigate concerns before they occur in the public domain as it relates to marketing. And so, for instance, relaying necessary information is key and critical, but focusing on the solutions is also key and critical. And so ultimately, miscommunication should not be a surprise during a crisis. It's already difficult enough in terms of marketing and communication as well as strategic management to consistently and clearly communicate with all of your stakeholders, but in particular in a crisis. And then finally, healthcare professionals, they achieve better outcomes by setting the tone at the beginning of a crisis. And I think that we have all learned from this from on a global scale. So communicating the crises, communicating it clearly, being authentic and transparent is so key and critical to maintaining the mental health of our patients. And so from a higher education standpoint, I would also extend to our students, to staff, faculty, and then in industry across the board. So anyway, thank you for having me at this conference, Babu. Thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate everything that you have done, and I've taken this copious notes.
Okay, that's a mountain of ideas. That's a mountain of ideas. I mean, I know you are not in China, otherwise you would have talked much slowly than this. Okay. So good to see. Related to this, you know, before we move to the next dimension of the issue, you know, I'm looking at Sonia again. I am fortunate to be able to know all these wonderful people. With Sonia, I worked on mental health and, you know, well-being of veterans, you know, in the U.S. Armed Forces. So, I mean, I'm not asking Sonia to talk about that, but Sonia, what do you think about healthcare during COVID in general, or any particular dimension that you would like to discuss?
Thank you, Babu. Thank you for having me. Actually, I am working with military students at this time, and they're not children, and they're not even college age, but they're veterans, and so that in itself is a challenge. So right now, with the COVID situation and the time that they were at home and with children and without jobs, it has taken a toll and it has had an impact on their health. Now, I have right now a class where I do meet with them, and even that is challenging because we have to be so distant And we have to, and the course itself is 2 hours long. So it's a real challenge, and it has been challenging for them. And I think it's going to continue to be because of the uncertainty that we have and all the changes that have taken place with COVID.
Oh, that was short and sweet.
You were expecting more.
No. I wish we had more time, and I could expect I could make you speak more. It's all we don't want to leave.
I know, right?
As usual, this is the last day of the conference, and there are paper presenters waiting to complete the session. Okay, so let's slightly move on to the business dimensions of healthcare, the strategy, tactics, and operations. There is no single picture when you look at scenarios around the world. In some countries, they adopt a particular strategy. In another country, it's an entirely diagonally opposite strategy. It's so hard to say what works, what doesn't work, where it works. I mean, generally we may say what is happening in the United States didn't work, but maybe a similar strategy works somewhere else. So it's not a cut and clear picture. I mean, there are business professors here who look at the business strategies associated with healthcare. Let me start asking this question to Mauricio. Good to see you again. Particularly thinking about Central South America, I mean, that's where you are from. What do you think about healthcare as a business? Or, I mean, that's just a leading question. You don't need to answer that. I mean, I'm just trying to prompt you to.
Okay, really thank you, Babu, for the opportunity to talk about from business, from the reality for countries. Maybe in Harvard Business School, we were talking one month ago about the shutdown strategy for some countries in Latin America, like Uruguay. It was a voluntary strategy, and Salvador, it was a total shutdown. That's why we don't have cases. We have cases, but not in the amount and quantity that you have in US. And maybe the problem it is the approach, because if we are talking about Sweden, for example, it was an open strategy. Open doors is difficult sometimes, and I consider it depends of cultural issues. But I would like to take 1 minute to express for me, based on the strategy and based on business for the future. For me, the most important thing is the first mover advantage for countries that they can get in the digital strategy. And I'm totally agree with Professor Williams and the 5P model for reprogramming normal marketing in chaotic environments. People, product, process, partnerships, and potential. But everything is going to be close related for the future to the sustainable supply chain management of products and services. And this sustainable supply value chain need to be in some strategic parts, needs to be digital for today and for the future. The new normal never is going to be the same reality of 5 years ago or 1 year ago or 3 years ago. And we need to moving forward for the digital strategy in some specific parts of that value chain, the supply chain. And cultural issues provoke more problems, like wear face masks or social distance. For example, right now in UK, there have been many problems with face masks. So cultural issues is a big trouble, And for me, the most important thing is to moving forward, thinking forward in the digital way, in the digital strategy, from business to the public policy for policymakers and for the countries. If we can get maybe for the future, as I'm telling to the people in strategy in my Harvard course is I'm talking about a lot of things about, the digital government, the real e-government. If we can get an e-government or digital government like Estonia with digital ID, you can use a digital ID. We don't need for the future a lot of contact, because the problem with COVID is we are not maintaining the social distance. The problem is the social distance, But if we are working for the future, more digital, thinking forward, thinking more digital, maybe we are going to stop many problems. That is my point of view, and I'm totally agree. I really love the presentation of Professor Williams. Really, thank you. I really appreciate your presentation, Professor.
Awesome. um, I'm now looking at Dr. Siddiq. He is from Bangladesh. So very unique perspective, but he also has insights about China based on his time being there. So the floor, can I call it floor, or the space is open for you?
Thank you. Thank you. It's okay. I can share my experiences here in Bangladesh. Basically, Bangladesh is, in South Asia. It's a highly populated country. So thank God that the impact is not yet destructive here in terms of human lives, basically. But the thing here is, I looked on the issues like the post-COVID financing mechanism provided by the government, because in our country here, the most people are in the kind of, so the poor people are there in remote areas, so they cannot manage the healthcare expenses. It's quite beyond their manageable income, right? So the government has come in front, and they are providing the healthcare expenses, like in terms of vaccinations. Yesterday, the vaccination started in our country from Indian government. We started it, but the earlier said, one professor said that it is the digital government, and the digital financial payment system has been used here. The mobile financial system, because the mobile banking, we're using it to transfer the fund to the COVID patients in terms of stimulus, so that they can manage their expenses. And as well as the incentives to the frontliners who are helping people to come up with the solution of this pandemic. So because if you see that the 1 year ago, it wasn't the mobile banking who was dominating. It wasn't the e-governance system who was dominating. It was the traditional brick and mortar system. Basically, you need to go elsewhere. But now the scenario has been changed. It is as said by the Professor Williams, that yes, we are moving toward the e-governance, e-management, ecosystems. So it is happening now in Bangladesh, and it's good. But this is the positive side of this this COVID-19 in terms of Bangladesh, basically.
So that's very interesting, because we keep reading about the recent resurgence of Bangladesh. Everybody had written of Bangladesh, at one point in time, but it is showing a great deal of progress over the last few years. And so it is true also about healthcare, because I remember passing through Dhaka once, and it was a very rundown city at that time, but all the latest images I see are very different.
Yeah, you're true there. Yeah, it is right. The scenario has been changed now. So this is from my part. Thank you, sir, for inviting me.
It's our great pleasure that we get all these experts from around the world, and this is the third panel. I think we covered almost all continents with people here, among all these three panels. That's very interesting that we have these technologies to help us bring people together.
Thank
So I mean, some of the panel members are not here. I can see Professor Thomas Panko, and Dr. Panko messaged me that his microphone does not work. He's a professor emeritus at the University of Southern Mississippi. My former colleague and Dr. Williams' former colleague. We all respect Dr. Panko, and he wanted to share something. Can you hear me, Dr. Panko? Unfortunately, he cannot hear, but he is here to bless us with his presence. Hello, Professor Panko. Okay, he's okay. Any other panel members are here? I cannot see on the screen. If any of the panel members are here, please unmute yourself and come. This is an odd time because we invited people, some of them have it like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning, and we didn't do a proper time zone calculation at that time. So that's why some of the panel members are missing. Why not we have a short conversation, like 5-minute conversation among ourselves? Any of you? I'm just taking a back seat. Dave, would you want to say something, or anyone else want to say something as a final note, or all of you can say 10 seconds long comments to conclude this before we open it for some short question answers?
To me, it's fascinating to hear, from everyone around the world, and it's easy for me in the U.S. to be so focused on our own healthcare system and really have little understanding of how the systems around the world are affected. So that's been really fascinating. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead. Please don't wait.
Okay, since I raised my hand and I unmuted myself, I have a little questions for the panel members. One thing I've noticed in Vietnam that there's been a flurry of new legislation coming in, especially about allowing more international companies, pharmaceutical companies, and healthcare-related companies to come to Vietnam. The new laws also make it easier for foreign investment, for example, for mergers and acquisitions, for foreign hospitals to buy local clinics. And also some of the legal documentation and associated processes and fees apparently have been reduced. I was wondering if this is the case in other countries as well.
Anyone?
So I can say a little bit about not that kind of regulation like on buying or acquisitions, but I can talk about some regulations. Those are imposed by FDA and those regulatory organizations into approval of new drug. And so for example, at the time of COVID-19, and so what we have observed that COVID-19 was treated or considered as emergency, national emergency, and a lot of different kind of tools or techniques or basically technologies related to COVID-19 were approved in a very, very short period of time, which usually take months, and under emergency use authorization code, and those from FDA, lot of technologies, lot of things were approved real fast. Everything is at some point almost everything anything has related to that has the possibility of treating the COVID-19 or diagnosis or anything related to that, and things were relaxed a lot in terms of regulatory requirements. So that's definitely something has very interesting to see under emergency use authorization. Probably it is the same kind of like the post-COVID scenario where considering this as a national emergency in many nations and a lot of things are relaxed.
Thank you, Nayan.
So from UAE's point of view, if you really see, there is a complete focus on healthcare innovation and delivery of healthcare. So there is a separate free zone which has been created for healthcare.
Good. That's a good intervention.
So what's happening is there is a complete free zone for healthcare delivery. So a lot of companies have initiated factories and set up over here. Then there is another aspect to is well-being free zone. So if you really see that, they are going to really keep this as a combination of healthcare and well-being, which has to be delivered to the citizens and residents of UAE. And not only just residents, but visitors and tourists who are coming from different places. So that's a kind of a change which is happening. And there are a lot of incubation centers which has been started for specifically on the healthcare, drug manufacturing. So even the vaccine manufacturing, there is a separate setup which has been started. So there's a complete focus on the healthcare from the government point of view. Yes, of course, this comes along with a lot of regulation which is there, which has been initiated by the government. So that's what's happening in this part of the world.
I was talking to a physician working in Dubai and not Dubai, I think Sharjah, and he was saying that right now the so-called China vaccine is distributed everywhere, and people are resistant to receive it. They are waiting for better vaccines to come. Is that true?
It is actually. There's a mindset, I don't. It's drugs are drugs. I think clinical people who are there.
Yes.
Any drug you take, whether it's a vaccination or any drug, so if the body has to react, it'll react. And so yes, you are right. I think it's some little concerns are there based on the media information. A matter of fact, I have taken a Sinopharm Chinese vaccine. Yeah, just to make sure that it's a perspective. So we have 3 vaccines as of now: Sputnik, Pfizer one, and Sinopharm. So people are, and it's not just normal citizens, even the rulers, everyone is taking those kind of thing. And efficacy study showed it's around 86.3% in UAE when they did a clinical trial. So there are data which is really backing some of the, vaccination. So it is a perspective. I think that will change in due course of time. As more and more variants are going to come, I think that will change the perspective.
So should we open the floor for the audience? Anyone from the audience, would you like to ask any question to the panel members? You could ask to the panel or to particular members. Sounds like everyone received a lot of information and they are processing it. So that means we will conclude. Thank you, everyone, for your kindness and willingness to come and share your insights for the benefit of this panel. And this is, in addition to Zoom, this is being broadcasted through YouTube. So it will remain online. People can listen later. I'm very happy that we could bring a very diverse set of people from different backgrounds and professional areas. Hopefully all these interactions of perspectives will help us develop our own ideas about healthcare in the post-COVID world. Have a good time ahead, morning, afternoon, evening, or as I say, twilight zone, wherever you are. So over to Karishma.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for the informative session. Now, let me invite Shifa Abdul Salam for the word of thanks. Over to you, Shifa.
Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Alvin J. Williams, Dr. Jansi Devi, Dr. Babu George, panel members, organizing committee, and all the participants, a very good morning to one and all. On behalf of the Department of Commerce and Management Studies, I take this opportunity to extend vote of thanks to those who have directly and indirectly contributed to this seminar. I would like to thank our Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Alvin J. Williams. We are really enlightened by sharing your valuable knowledge and gracious presence. I would like to thank Dr. Babu George, Professor and Associate Dean, Graduate Business, Christian Brothers University, USA. I'm immensely thankful to Dr. Jansi Devi for being with us on this special day. A special mention to our panel members of the day for enlightening us with knowledge. I would also like to thank the people behind the scene to make this event happen. I would also thank all the participants for attending this event. Once again, thanking you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Shifa. With this, we conclude the technical session. No duty is more urgent than that of returning thanks. With these words, let us start our valedictory program. I now invite a high-spirited and cheerful teacher, Ms. Shilpa M.A., for the welcome address. Over to you, Miss.
Success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you are doing, you will be successful. A very good morning to everyone present here. I take this privilege to welcome all our delegates to the valedictory function of International Virtual Conference on Post-COVID Global Scenario, Threats and Opportunities, organized by Department of Commerce and Management Studies, St. Joseph College, Autonomous Irinalakuda, in collaboration with Graduate Business, Christian Brothers University, USA. First of all, I take this opportunity to welcome our dear principal, Dr. Sister Asha Teres. Welcome, sister. I also extend my welcome to our vice principals, Sister Blessy and Dr. Sister Eliza. Welcome, dear sisters. Now, I welcome our self-financing coordinator, Dr. Sister Rose Bastin, to this valedictory session. I extend my hearty welcome to our core coordinator, Dr. Babu George, and I would also like to welcome our head of the department, Professor K.I. Thomas. Now, I take this opportunity to welcome our former heads, Professor Jacob G. Mambili, Dr. Philo Francis, Dr. Jansi Devi, and alumni and head of the department, NSS College, Ottapalam, Dr. Vasantakumari P. I welcome you all. It's my pleasure to welcome our keynote speakers, Dr. Bivali Bivtali, Dr. Bashir Ahmad Khan, and Dr. Alvin J. Williams. Now, I extend my welcome to our chairing persons, Dr. Vikram Singh Baraj, Dr. Swaruba R., Dr. D.H. Malini, and our panel members to this gathering. Now, I welcome all the members of organizing committee and coordinators of the program. Welcome you all. Last but not the least, I wholeheartedly welcome all of our participants to this valedictory function. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss, for the heartwarming welcome. Now I request the courageous and inventive Dr. Joseph Turek, Dean at Business School at Christian Brothers University, USA. Over to you, sir.
Welcome and good evening to me. I don't know, maybe morning in other parts of the world. We're pushing 10 o'clock in the evening here in Memphis, Tennessee. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to address such an esteemed group of scholars. I'm especially grateful to my friend and colleague Babu George for the invitation and for his role in organizing and hosting this conference. I have to confess to being somewhat impressed that over 300 people are still on the conference in the last session of the last day. I'm just absolutely thrilled that you stayed around to hear the closing remarks. I guess we just chalk that up to one of the other advantages of virtual meetings. Over the last 2 days, I've heard many different perspectives on the COVID experience. I'm going to take a slightly different approach to the subject, looking at the microeconomic dimensions of the pandemic. As you might surmise, I am an economist, and I'm afraid that I may earn the title dismal scientist before the session is over. A quick disclaimer though, as will become very obvious very quickly, my comments are limited to the US experience. During our recent presidential election, the two candidates fought a constant battle over the role that science and scientists should play in shaping the public policy response to the health crisis. On day one of this conference, you heard Dr. Haught, our academic vice president at Christian Brothers, say that we put science at the forefront of all of our decisions. This is true, and I agree that this is a good thing, but I feel compelled to point out that doing so is only a half measure. That's because much of what we're discussing is not about the behavior of the novel coronavirus. It is really about the behavior of ordinary people, you and I, in response to the threat posed by the virus. If you think I'm overstating my case, consider this. While there are now 2, perhaps 3 vaccines that have received emergency use authorization, a substantial portion of the US population has indicated that it will not take the vaccine. At the present time, 39% of the population has indicated that they will definitely or probably not be vaccinated against COVID. The question has been raised whether we'll have enough people vaccinated to achieve herd immunity. So science may provide answers, but we have to be willing to embrace them. So what I really want to talk about is the human aspect of the pandemic, the behavioral dimension that really is, I think, fundamentally important in not only guiding solutions, but helping us understand the nature of the problem itself. A lot of what has happened in the last year has less to do with governments and policies and more to do with the millions of decentralized decisions made by people around the world. The only way to make sense of human behavior under these circumstances is to draw upon insights from the vast literature on decision-making under risk. Consider the following. My daughter, 21 years old, when she returned from college in the middle of spring semester last year, wanted to run out to Starbucks to get a coffee, go to the beauty salon to get her nails done, and walk the mall. When I reminded her that there's a pandemic going on, she shrugged her shoulders, remarking that young people are not affected. I locked the door and didn't let her out of the house. But here we see, importantly, that low perceived risk leads to more risky behavior. Later in the summer, during one of our conversations about the virus, my daughter again revealed a set of calculations demonstrating that in the United States at the time, the COVID mortality rate was 0.0067%. Virtually nothing, she exclaimed, arguing that the probability of dying was so low as to be insignificant. She again launched her campaign to go shopping. This is a stark reminder that we are all, many of us anyway, ill-equipped to assess risk, and the subjectivity of risk assessment is prone to all kinds of cognitive biases. This year, the annual Mardi Gras celebration in New Orleans was canceled. Last year, however, the mayor of New Orleans chose not to cancel Mardi Gras, supposedly because the president didn't tell her to. 13 days later, they reported their first case of COVID. By March 26, the New York Times ran an article with a headline that read, "New Orleans faces a virus nightmare and Mardi Gras may be why." "We were not given a direct warning," said the mayor. Well, a study that was subsequently done found that the direct economic impact of $145.7 million and an indirect impact of $322 million accrued to the city of New Orleans. So as an economist, I have to wonder the extent to which that particular set of facts influenced the decision to continue to go ahead and sponsor, to hold the Mardi Gras. So continuing along those lines, too many employers, I believe, and this is a source of tremendous concern to me, have put the bottom line ahead of the health of their employees and their customers. In fact, one employee in Memphis, Tennessee, offered a bonus to employees who didn't miss any work, thus creating an incentive for people to come to work even if they're sick. In order to bolster the economy, the federal government in the United States pushed schools to open so parents could return to work. We were initially told that we shouldn't wear masks. It didn't make sense to me that doctors were screaming about not having access to masks and other protective equipment, but we were being told that masks would provide the average citizen no protection. The CDC eventually admitted that it was telling people not to wear masks because they were worried about having insufficient quantities for first responders. We were then told that wearing a mask would not protect us, but it would protect others if we were sick and in fact contagious. Social media campaigns and public service announcements emphasized that mask wearing was the socially responsible thing to do. Compliance was mixed. Economists would not have been surprised by this. If doing something provides no benefit to the individual and only produces external benefits to other people, we should not expect large numbers of people to choose to wear masks. When we were finally told that masks would in fact protect us, people were so skeptical that many failed to heed the warning. When cities and states adopted mask mandates, it became a political battle. These mandates and lockdowns and other mitigation strategies were criticized by people who thought that their personal freedoms were under attack. Now, freedom is a good thing until it's not. Every economist knows that in the presence of externalities, individual choices diverge from the social optimum. It turns out that freedom of choice, freedom of association, and all of the freedoms that go along with liberal democracy inhibit the ability of governments to promote the public interest. In the United States, at least, we have become so polarized that people on one side are incapable of hearing what people on the other side have to say. We have got to get past this. Social fragmentation in the United States makes collective solutions very, very difficult at a time when most of the really important problems facing us require collective action. I heard someone say yesterday that there can be no return to the way things were. And I made a note as I was listening to the panel and the Dr. Williams address that he echoed that same sentiment. And then I noticed again during the panel discussion, many of you weighed in agreeing. I, frankly, am not sure that I believe that. After the horrific events of 9/11, I too thought that things would never be the same. 20 years later, I can tell you that the only real artifact of 9/11 is heightened airport security. We have pretty much gone back to the way things were. After the subprime crisis and the housing meltdown in 2007, regulatory changes imposed new and more prudent guidelines on lending institutions. 10 years later, many lenders had moved back to their old practices. Now, some of you may recall the shooting on the Virginia Tech campus in 2007. I had a friend who worked there, and I happened to comment to her that I really thought that Virginia Tech should have anticipated the shooting. She was so mad at me, she wouldn't talk to me for about a year. Now, every campus in the United States has a crisis response plan, and some even do active shooting drills. But here's the really interesting and important point that I want to make, and that is that none of these schools had such precautions in place in 2007. An active shooter on a college campus, while not unheard of, was so improbable that no one put protections against such an event in place. It wasn't even on their radar. But after Virginia Tech, campus shootings were on everybody's radar, and all schools established appropriate policies and protections. What did they learn? That they needed to protect against active shooters. But what about food tampering in the dining hall? That's still not on anybody's radar, and nobody is protecting against that particular threat. We all know that agility is essential for survival in a world that is rapidly changing and filled with uncertainty. It is not surprising that we are now seeing all kinds of adaptations in education, industry, and healthcare, as many of you have documented, in response to the COVID crisis. Just like active shooter drills, we are seeing adaptations. But what have we learned? I fear not enough. I humbly suggest to you that any increase in agility is short-lived and perhaps even an illusion. Are we moving into a period of continuous change? Or, as I submit is more likely, have we merely moved from one equilibrium to another where we will once again remain until the next shock to the system? Thank you for your attention. If there are any comments or questions, I certainly would be eager to discuss them.
If anyone has any questions, you may ask in the comment section right now. I guess there's no questions. So thank you, Professor. Now it is time for declaring the best paper presenter on the topics education, trade, commerce, and industry and health. For declaring this, I invite Dr. Babu George Sir, Associate Professor and Dean at Christian Brothers University, USA. Over to you, sir.
Okay, so this is probably the most important part of the event for those of you who made paper presentations. I was not directly a part of the judging committee. However, I know that the school has taken extreme care to peer review and rate the papers based on several dimensions that include impacts, in methodology, the presentation style, the relevance of the paper for COVID-19 and beyond. You know, several dimensions related to the theme of the conference. And the papers were reviewed by a panel of reviewers coordinated by 3 of the faculty members within the college. Let me go to the best papers in each of the 3 major themes. In the theme of education during COVID, the best paper is Impact of COVID-19 on Higher Education Learning in Kerala by Mohammad Faizuddin, Dr. Abdul Aziz. That's the paper rated as the best paper in the education category. In the trade, commerce, and industry category, the second themes, the theme for the second day, the best paper is Financial Market and Commodity Market Reaction to COVID-19 Pandemic. So that paper was authored and presented by Arjun BS. Today's theme, that is healthcare during COVID-19. The best paper, the paper selected as the best paper was Role of Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana on the health-related quality of life of beneficiaries during COVID-19 pandemic. It's authored by Chaitanya. So these are the 3 papers in each of the themes. I must say that the conference organizers received several papers. It was going up, and finally they had to stop receiving papers. Only 45 carefully selected papers were allowed to be presented. And out of these 45 papers, several of them were very good submissions. The members of the panel told me that the selection was not easy. So just because your paper is not one of the 3 papers mentioned here doesn't mean that it is of any lesser quality. Those who were tasked with judging the papers, they were finding it very difficult to choose one paper over other. So I congratulate the authors of these papers, and thank you so much. Over to you, Karishma.
To give us an overall review of the 3-day international conference, I would like to give this opportunity to the audience. So if anyone is interested, please, you may talk now. Over to you guys.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Respected Dr. Joseph Turek, Dean, School of Business, Christian Brothers University, USA. Dr. Babu George, Professor and Associate Dean, Graduate Business, Christian Brothers University, USA, and the core coordinator of the seminar. Sister Rose Baston, Self-Financing Coordinator. The head of the department, Professor K.L. Thomas. The organizing committee, the principal of the college, the organizing committee, and the coordinators of the seminar. And Roji George, Michael Virere, Andrea Vergis, delegates from all over the world, teachers, media, and participants, and my dear friends. Indeed, a great opportunity for me myself, Deepa, Assistant Professor, Sri Narayana College, Natiga, and research scholar of Dr. P. Vasandakumari, the alumni of St. Joseph's College, and the former HOD, NSS College, Ottapalam. Overall, to put it into simple words, I must say that a well-arranged, well-organized, well-implemented seminar. All the specification intended for the international conference has been complied with. This is not words, it comes in the real sense. To begin with, all the sessions had keynote address and panel discussion. Each session were very specific. It was very specific because the technical sessions were well arranged, and each had a keynote address, and it was discussed and deliberated in a very positive manner. What struck in me was the arrangement of the topics, in which all the related areas were discussed. And this discussions and panel discussions and the keynote address adds as a highlight to the conference. So to the organizers who selecting the need of the hour as a topic from all the related fields, which included education, trade, commerce, industry. Such a panel could clearly throw insight. Actually, this was what was intended by a seminar. This is what I believe, because all what was intended was well implemented, because it threw insight to the thoughts to the participants. So indeed, the conference could complete its mission. So the organizers can be very proud of yourself, because the third day ending and the mission was well achieved in its real sense. Seriously, this is what the educationalists and the colleges must look forward to, because when conducting an international conference, it need not be in a namesake. The quality must be always adhered to. That is the only reason why when best paper awards were declared just now, it was an overwhelming session for me, because I felt very happy because the quality, the parameters of the quality was strictly sticked on, and the best paper was awarded. When Babu George sir told they had to screen and 45 papers had to be selected, that is a parameter, and there lies the quality of the seminar. Because next time when such a seminar will be announced, everyone is going to have in mind that how to raise their standard and how to achieve or how to increase their standard. Even the students, the research scholars, I know everyone will be looking forward for the next webinar too. And a conference with a very high profile and knowledge-oriented session. And from St. Joseph's, can be St. Joseph's College, Irinalakuda, the entire faculty, entire fraternity can be proud, and yet another milestone to the achievement of St. Joseph's College. Congratulations to the department and the college. And to speak about the organizers, I need to speak about Babu George sir first, because he is the core committee coordinator, who indeed can be very proud, because have organized the seminar in a very fruitful way, who could collect, who could integrate from all parts of the world, the ideas from all parts of the world, and put it into a framework which added the beauty to the seminar. And about the self-financing coordinator, Sister Rose Baston. Ma'am, it's a very proud moment for you. And Thomas sir, the backbone of the department, the head of the Department of Self-Financing, whose ideas and vision got successfully implemented, and who made this into a successful one. And for all the collective works which had made the program a grand success, well, I must specially congratulate the organizers, coordinators, who indeed have worked from morning to night for the past one or 1.5 months Maybe not, that is not enough, I know. And whose sincere hard work has made today. Because I feel that in future also, let this be a beginning, and let it continue forever, and let you be in heights. And congratulations to the coordinators of the seminar, Roji George, Michael Vivera, and Andrea Varghese. And one more thing I must say, privileged organizers, well-profiled organizers you have for the entire, because I could see the list of faculties who has once been a full-time part of the college: Thomas sir, Jacob sir, Philo miss, Jansi miss, Vasnuma teacher, and all the faculty members also, because I know that adds beauty to the department. And and this was a grand success, and congratulations to the coordinators, and St. Joseph's can be very proud of today, and more than what they have achieved till date, and they will be going to achieve in the future. And sure, with such a head of department and with such an organizing team, everything is possible and nothing is impossible. Take this opportunity to mention that I was given an opportunity to speak a few words, and I feel grateful and honored today that I could speak this as a review. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to request anyone else from the audience if they want to speak on it.
Respected dignitaries, academicians, researchers, and scholars. A very good morning to you all. Myself, Rekha Menon, Assistant Professor of Commerce, NSS College at Appalam. I think I'm audible. Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, I can. Okay. The 3-day virtual international conference organized by the Department of Commerce and Management Studies, St. Joseph's College, Iranjalkoda, in collaboration with Christian Brothers University, USA, was a very well organized one. I would like to congratulate and thank the management, principal, and faculties and students of Commerce and Management Studies, St. Joseph's College, for coming up with a well-planned conference. In fact, from the 3-day session, I could say that all the keynote speakers were very well resourceful persons. The panel discussions during the 3-day conferences were very helpful in getting relevant information from around the world relating to the current economic situation, about how the various sectors were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic situation and the strategies adopted to overcome the downturn. In fact, the panel discussion as well as the keynote addresses were very good quality resources. It was truly a global discussions, and the panel discussions was very well coordinated, and all the discussions and all the sessions were on time. The paper presentation sessions were also very well scheduled and organized. So I should also mention the support provided to the conference by the former faculties and alumni of this St. Joseph College. They needs a special mention also. So I would like to congratulate all the organizing committee members, all the faculty members and students of Commerce and Management Studies of the St. Joseph College for their great effort and their initiative in making this conference a grand success. Congratulations to all the coordinators and organizing committees. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So
Hello, good morning.
Okay, does
Can
anyone
you hear
else
me?
talk about it on this topic from the audience session?
Can you hear me now? Hello,
Hello?
can you hear me now?
Yes, sister, we can hear you. Hello, sister.
Yeah. So I was listening the program well, and I'm so happy to see various resource persons from different continents of the world. And I would like to thank Dr. Babu George. Mr. Babu George, are you hearing? Are you listening?
Yes, yes, I am. Thank you so much.
Okay. So I'm so happy and satisfied, and we had a really wonderful experience. I'm all the more happy because I could also see some familiar faces. Professor Alvin Williams, then Professor Pango, who had once before presented a international seminar in St. Joseph's College. I don't know whether they are listening this concluding session now. If not, please convey my regards to them, and also please tell all the resource persons, please inform them that the institution is so grateful to each and every one of them for spending their precious time, and all the more for being at the right time, giving their presence at the right time for this huge audience scattered in different places over the world. So it's a great thing because, as you mentioned earlier, the time schedule is different for different people in different continents. And now I think in America it may be 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. Like that, in every country, the timing is very much different from the other. Still, they were very keen to be present there at the right time and to present their talk, as well as the panel members were ready there, because many panel members are there in each panel, and all of them were there. And I know Dr. Babu George would have worked really hard behind that to arrange such a well-organized panel discussion. And the keynote address speakers also, they spoke very well, and it was a very informative session. So I thank all the resource persons, especially Dr. Babu George, for arranging this wonderful program. And I was so happy and overwhelmed with joy to watch the people, our brethren from different countries, different continents, being very close to us through this international conference. Again, I also would like to thank Dr. Vasanthagumari and her team, then paper presenters, paper evaluators from different universities, experts, and I'd like to congratulate the Department of Commerce and Management Studies, Professor K.I. Thomas, and all the faculty members. And the studio, we have a well arranged studio here from where it is hosted. So I congratulate people in charge of the studio and the principal and the vice principals, faculty members, all who cooperated. Then I thank God Almighty for making it a success, because there are many difficulties, or there can be many hindrances, but still we could do it well. So thank God Almighty. Then please convey our regards to all the resource persons and the faculty members. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, sister. That was our self-financing coordinator, Dr. Sister Rose Baston. So for the attention of all the participants, please do fill the form that we have attached in the chat box in Zoom. So moving on, Now I invite our vibrant and enthusiastic teacher, Ms. Steffi Joes, to propose a vote of thanks. Over to you, Ms.
Proud privilege to register the vote of thanks to all the luminaries. Dr. Sister Asha Teres, Principal of St. Joseph College, Autonomous Irinalakuda, is the right skipper whose constant support and encouragement made this 3-day international virtual conference a reality. Thank you, dear sister. I thank our vice principals, Sister Blessy and Dr. Sister Eliza, for their generous support and cooperation. Dr. Sister Rose Bastin, our former vice principal and coordinator of self-financing section, the St. Joseph College Autonomous Irinalakuda, is a strong pillar who invariably supports us in all our endeavors. Thank you, dear sister. Professor K. Thomas, head of the Department of Commerce and Management Studies, is a strength and source of inspiration to all of us. It is because of his untiring energy we could organize this program successfully. Thank you, sir, for your guidance and support. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Babu George, Professor and Associate Dean, Graduate Business, Christian Brothers University, USA, is the person who helped us to convene this 3-day international virtual conference a reality. Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to take an excuse if I mispronounce your names, and please pardon me for the same. I record my immense gratitude for Dr. Vikram Singh Variak, Dr. Swaruba R, and Dr. D.H. Malini for chairing the paper presentation session in spite of your hectic schedule. Thank you for your guidance and cooperation. Dr. Bivali B. Vitali, Professor and Director, Institute for Leadership Development, Christian Brothers University, USA, was the keynote speaker of the first day panel discussion. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your enlightening thought to us. Dr. Bashir Ahmad Khan, former Vice Chancellor of SKM University and President of Middle East University, led the second day panel discussion. It was really interesting and informative. Thank you for being with us, sir. Dr. Alvin J. Williams, Distinguished Professor of Marketing, University of South Alabama, USA, led the Day 3 panel discussion. Thank you, sir, for leading such thought-provoking and mind-blowing session. I take this opportunity to thank all the luminaries of the panel discussion for sharing all their knowledge, which was very useful for us. Thank you all for your cooperation. A special thanks to Professor Jacob G. Mambili, Dr. Philo Francis, Dr. Jansi Devi, Dr. Vasnakumari P. for their help, support, guidance, and cooperation. Now, let me thank all the members of the organizing committee and coordinators of this program. I acknowledge the invariable support of technical team, and finally, I thank all the participants for your valuable support and cooperation. Once again, thanking you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss. Always remember, we have a chance to do something extraordinary. As we head out of a pandemic, we can change the world, create a world of love, a world where we are kind to each other, a world where we are kind no matter what class, race, sexual orientation, what religion or lack of what job we have. A world we do not judge those at the food bank because that may be us if we think slightly different. Let love and kindness be our roadmap. On this note, let us wind up this program. Once again, we thank you, each and one of the participants in this program, but also give a special thanks to all the technical crew and members. I would like to also thank Mr. Alex Suresh and Mr. Jeswin Jose for their wonderful contribution on all the 3 days of our conference. Once again, thank you and have a wonderful day ahead.
Right.